Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe. Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to another experience of Me and Paranormal You. This is Ryan Singer, the host of the program. If you've never listened before, this is a show where I interview friends, sometimes strangers, about incredible experiences, about the weird, the strange, the mystical, the supernatural, specifically the paranormal, sometimes even secret society stuff. But today I am talking to a buddy of mine, kind of a new friend, at least a new real life friend of mine. Oh my God. I mean, a diner buddy, a mountain friend, a paranormal compadre. Forrest, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Ryan.
We are going to get into some really interesting, exciting, fascinating stuff. We spent some time together up at Mount Shasta. You were helping kind of show us the lay of the land, which led to some really fun, fascinating experiences. And I got to tell you, Eric and I, from Eric of Epic Paranormal, and my buddy Alex, who was there helping film. He doesn't have a ton of experience with the paranormal. I mean, he helped film, like, I don't know, a year and a half ago at Post Town, but that was mostly it. But how quickly you were, I'm trying to, what was it, the spirit box or whatever device I'm trying to remember the device we were using, in the snow in the mountains that one day, and it was just like, oh, you've never used this before, here, hold this. And then you're just like, I've been using this device for 20 years. I mean, you're just such a natural with it. It was really fun to be out there. I want to talk about your fascinating experiences because, obviously we've talked a little bit about them already, and I maybe think it might be a good idea for us to start from the beginning, if that works.
Okay, yeah. So where do you want me to start? What kind of we were talking about
Well,
Mount
I
Shasta?
think, well, one of the most interesting things to me is, I guess, I don't know if I want to call it a location based hallucination. I don't know if that's uh, an LBH or whatever we want to call them. It seems, if I'm remembering correctly, there seems to be something specific about a location when you're a child,
Yeah.
and uh, the onset of an experience, an SPE, a spontaneous paranormal experience. I think it would classify under that, but kind of a location based phenomena.
Yeah. So the first time I ever remember having that kind of phenomenon was I was a little kid and we were driving down. I lived in Portland, grew up in Portland, and all of our family was in Southern California, so we would drive I-5 multiple times a year. And I just remember one night we were driving past Mount Shasta, and it was the first time that Mount Shasta really entered my consciousness. And I'm guessing I was probably 4 or 5. And as we went past the mountain, it was about dusk, and I looked over, and everything just went completely fishbowl. You know, I totally hallucinated. It looked like I was looking through the bottom of a Coke bottle. Everything went silent. There was a ringing in my ears, and I just remember asking my parents, what is that? And in retrospect, the mountain looked 5 times bigger than it is, which is impressive because it's already a pretty big mountain. And that stuck with me my whole life. Definitely the first time I ever hallucinated, and made a huge impact on me. And, funnily enough, and I'm sure no coincidence, I ended up moving to Mount Shasta when I was 42, but it was always on my mind my entire life. And when we were coming down to try to find a place to live in Mount Shasta, we were driving through the little town of Dunsmuir, just south of here, and someone was telling me what a crappy town it was, and it was raining, and they were talking about drug addicts, and all of a sudden I had that fishbowl experience again. And we, I knew that was the place. And within 2 months, we had bought a house. About 9 months later, we moved down, but with that house was about 100 yards from where I hallucinated. So
The second
definitely,
time,
yeah, the second time,
the
yeah.
second time.
So again, right off I-5, not that far from where I had the first experience as a little kid. Um, yeah, I always try to follow universal signs. I'm not a big believer in coincidence. But when you have that kind of experience, I mean, I've done enough acid or mushrooms to know what a hallucination really feels like. To have that just spontaneously generate. Yeah, that's the universe shoving something in your face. So yeah,
Really, really, really is. I mean, to have it so many years apart and, 35 plus years apart in the same location. How long do you think it lasted when you were 4 or 5 years old, the initial hallucination?
maybe 15, 20 seconds. But like anything that's like that, in your memory, it feels like 3 minutes.
For
Um,
sure. I mean,
yeah,
15 to 20 seconds of the way I would explain it to people is, yeah, 15 seconds might not seem like a long time or a life-changing event, but try putting your hand in a fire for 15 seconds.
yeah, yeah,
That's going to leave a
exactly.
mark.
Yeah, and I know some of your experiences you've had. 15 seconds is a really long time for some things that you're going to endure. Um, but just for a kid of that age to have that kind of sense of awe and wonder, it tells you I was experiencing something.
For sure. And it's so fascinating to me. I mean, this to me rings of such like an epically, ancient call to the mountain type of tale, right? And I think we all want to, or at least I do. I love being dramatic. So I'm like, okay, Forrest was called to this mountain, like, and what purpose, what calling, what must he do now that he's here? Like what is his mission? But it could just be like, hey, you're just supposed to be here, man.
Yeah, yeah, it feels like I'm just supposed to be here. It feels like there's definitely a tribe that is called here. We had the conversation when I was there that I've met so many people that wanted to move here and decided they were going to move here, and either it never materialized because so many obstacles were thrown up, or they actually made it here and they basically got kicked out and had to leave within the next 6 months. Just nothing worked out for them. So yeah, it definitely feels like there's a community of people here that are drawn here, want to be here, um, are happy here. It's definitely a power place. And I think I told you when I lived in England for almost a decade. Someplace else I always felt drawn to, and then I just happened to marry someone who was British. And the very first time I met that I went to Glastonbury, which is another power place, uh, I had that same fishbowl hallucination and was just called there. Another deeply mystical place that's got essentially in a mountain. It's a hill, but it's a mountain with an old tower that sits on the top of it, St. Michael's Tower. Exact same experience, just drawn there, absolutely called there. So yeah, I think once you've had a few of those experiences, you can't ignore them, or you probably shouldn't ignore them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say ignore them at your own peril, but maybe at the cost of maybe your happiness or your life's bliss.
Yeah,
For sure. I Have you had these hallucinations in other places? Maybe or were these the main three?
those were the main ones, and they seem to be in those power places, or in places not far from Glastonbury was Stonehenge, which is obviously very impressive. Even more impressive than Stonehenge is a little village called Avebury, and Avebury, the whole town sits inside essentially a stone circle.
Oh, what?
Um, and yeah, just like Stonehenge is just that little circle. Avebury is an entire village within a circle of stones, and it's such a power place. It's absolutely amazing. And I didn't necessarily have the fish bowl hallucinations, but you absolutely feel high as a kite while you're there. I'm sure like you felt when you were here in Shasta. You know,
It's it's one of these things that's I mean, essentially, it's indescribable with words. So people have to go. I mean, I feel like I'm getting emotional thinking about it right now, talking to you. Um, I felt that way like the first time I ever had to leave Sedona, which was a very short trip. I was there for 16 hours, maybe. I drove in late at night in a rainstorm. It was torrential downpour. I was still kind of rocked from my frightening Florida experience that I had had. So I was scared of the dark still, even being in my car driving through these like really windy roads through the mountains coming from the north, from Flagstaff, driving through the mountains to get to Sedona. Having to drive like 5 miles an hour going around like, pin turned, like completely turning around, winding through the mountains. I was terrified because I kept just thinking there's going to be a creature in the middle of the road as I can barely see. And so finally I make it to Sedona. I can't see anything because it's 2:30 in the morning. I wake up the next day. It's beautiful. It's, there's clouds in the sky that look like cotton balls. I go explore the town for a little bit, but I have to hit the road. So I spend a few hours there. And as I'm leaving, I start crying in my car. And it's just like, wow, there's something about this place. And Shasta has the same effect. Um, these maybe you hallucinate and I cry. Maybe that's how our consciousness manifests, the understanding of being in these places. So it might sound strange, but like if a place makes me cry, I just can't wait to go back. Maybe that's the old Catholic in me, but you know, I I love this idea too about this European, this European pocket that you had, being so close to these power places. And Shasta is often referred to as the heart chakra of the world. Some people will refer to this place as that, and it's it's difficult, like I said, to explain and describe what it's like to be there. What happens when you move there? Like what happens to these feelings? Is it almost like, I have mountains in my back in the backdrop of my everyday life, and sometimes I forget they're there because I get so busy. Is there something energetically similar to adjusting and not taking for granted, but essentially just kind of, oh, it's just where I am now?
It takes a while, you know. Glastonbury and Mount Shasta had very different experiences. I think you're right. I've heard Shasta referred to as a heart chakra. I've heard Glastonbury referred to as the base chakra. So that'll tell you right now, right there, it's a little more intense. Um, yeah, coming to Shasta, it just felt like a breath of fresh air. It just felt like magic. It felt like anything was possible, you know. And I'd say the first couple of years I was here, again, I was just high as a kite all the time, and you could see people driving through town. They don't even know where they are. They're so high on the mountain. That's a real thing. We see it all the time. It took a while. I never take it for granted. I mean, living in McLeod, we're on the shoulder of the mountain. It's my daily view looking at it. Um, it definitely feels like an elevated experience here all the time. It never goes away. When I was in Glastonbury, the first couple times we went to Glastonbury, it just felt like a big warm hug. Like, wow, you should really be here. We were living in Canterbury across the country at the time. I was going to university, and we were actually going to Glastonbury to study new religious movements because I was studying religious studies. And the first time I visited, I just blew my mind. It's supposed to be where King Arthur was buried, if that was ever a thing. One of the oldest churches in all of the UK. But yeah, the first couple times it was just like a big hug. And then once we moved there, it was just super intense all the time. And we lived right downtown, what we called the Cauldron. Um, and it felt like the universe was just shoving a mirror in your face constantly. Have you taken care of this? Have you taken care of this? What are you going to do about this? When are you going to improve on this? When are you going to let this go? We'd have to take a holiday once in a while for a couple weeks at a time just to get away from that energy. It was unrelenting. So yeah, I think each place hits you a little bit different, um, and they absolutely change you. We're all vibrations, right? So when you go to these power places, those vibrations are changing you fundamentally, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're talking about this, holding up a mirror to you like constantly. I mean, so your wife is open to all of this kind of chatter and this talk as well, as opposed to like being one of the, materialist hardcore skeptic types.
No,
Okay.
I couldn't be with a person like that, but I'm very lucky. She's very open. She doesn't quite have the experiences that I've had, but she was a practicing Wiccan when we were in Glastonbury. She was a priestess of the well, the Chalice Well, went through the ceremonies and the ordination, and she worked downtown, right downtown, um, at a nonprofit that basically just supported people to come to town to teach, whether they were hedge witches or magicians or, whatever they might be. So she was around those kind of people all the time. And right next to that was the Goddess Temple, which was the only temple that was dedicated to the goddess in all of the UK. Um, and that was a special place to just go hang out and be and meditate. So, no, I'm really lucky. I've got a partner in crime on that one, and she's always kind of trusting me and trusting my instincts to be her guru, to take her to where we belong, and it's always seemed to work out.
Well, that's great. I mean, that sounds like a great team. The, it can be, I imagine it can be difficult for people who are having profound experiences and feel like they don't have the language or the, I guess, the access to share it with, their closest partner.
Yeah.
And, it's got to feel that's got to be a tough spot to be in for people. Um,
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, the other part of that is, I mean, that's such a foundation. She's such a foundation to me. I mean, we've known each other since we were 7. We've been friends since we were little kids,
oh, wow.
and went to school together. She, like I said, she's British, but her parents would move her back and forth, so she'd be 3 years in the UK, 2 years here, a year in the UK, a year back. And they always brought her back to the same school, so we've known each other our whole lives. So yeah, not a lot of people get that that lucky, that blessed.
Yeah, that is a rare thing. I mean, I suppose in the Midwest, I know a lot of, the people I grew up with, ended up coupling off and, starting families and things like that. But it might be a little more common out there. I don't know. But that's a really cool, that is a cool thing. I've always loved the idea of transplanting myself. For whatever reason, I had an uncle growing up, my mom's brother. He was the oldest of their siblings, and he moved to Scotland when I was younger. And so he'd always be on like speakerphone during the holidays. And for some reason, I was always like, that's cool, as opposed to being like, oh, he can be here at the holidays. I was always like, I want to be like my Uncle Mike, and I want to travel. I want to see the world. But it is weird how certain things resonate with us. And, you know, this idea too that these specific locations induce this effect on you. And, and I know people might think like, oh, this woo-woo talk about Shasta and these power places or, energy vortexes or vortex or whatever we want to call it. Um, it's it's something that a lot of people might dismiss who have never been there. I wonder, and it is interesting because when you're in Shasta, you do want to drive about 3 miles an hour because you feel like I don't, there's too much for me to take in right now. I can't go too fast. It makes you want to slow down. Um, Now, there's something really interesting too that I want to get into with you about the creature features about Shasta that you really illuminated me about. And but before we get into that, I want to take a quick break. We're going to drop in some commercials. We're going to keep the lights turned on. If you don't want commercials, you can go to patreon.com/Ryan Singer. $3 a month gets you no commercials. These episodes are also available on YouTube. So if you like to watch, podcasts or listen to your podcasts at YouTube, we're over there at YouTube as well. So you can find Ryan Singer, the official Ryan Singer channel over there, and you can watch all the pods. But we'll be right back with my buddy Forrest. And we are back. We are talking Shasta. We are talking power places. We are talking, I don't know, I guess I'm just calling them location based hallucinations that are, it's almost like, it almost feels like the universe is geocaching you, where like you show up at a place and you're activated, like almost in a video game when a character goes into a over a certain tile of the map, they get charged up, right? And I almost feel like Shasta is that place, and it has different effects on different people, potentially um more intense effects. I want to talk about creatures, but because we just teased that. But before that, I do want to ask if there has been or is anything fundamentally different post move to Shasta. Okay, so you have this, fishbowl hallucination experience. And it's like you're feeling called to go there. You move there, you find the house, you move there shortly after. Now when you're there, you're high all the time. It takes a couple of years to kind of adjust to that. Does this feel like, is there a moment where you feel like, okay, yes, we are walking the path that is laid out for us, or that I'm supposed to be on?
Yeah, I definitely feel like that all the time. Like I said, going back to following our path, just moving to the UK, taking two little kids and just diving into the abyss to move across the world. I'd never visited there before,
Oh wow.
um, just following your heart. So yeah, I mean, I'm all about the path. And I definitely feel like I'm in the place I'm supposed to be. I mean, since I moved here, I haven't had a lot of profound experiences. I've kept the door open for Saint Germain to come visit me at some point, and he hasn't done that yet. But I'll definitely let you know if that happens. Um,
I,
but
I didn't even think about talking about Saint Germain, but maybe,
yeah,
I don't know if we're gonna have
so
time today, but that's a whole nother thing. But
it is. But I mean, as far as hallucinations and stuff, no, I do just kind of feel high all the time. If and I think a lot of people do that live here. When I go back to civilization, I just feel so much more muddy and messy. And I don't know if it's just all the people, all the energy, all the cars, the busyness, or if it's the place. I'm not sure. I just know here I'm constantly called to go explore. To go out into the woods, to go find lakes, to go find rivers, and to be in a sense of peace all the time. Living here feels like a meditation. Um, I'd say the only thing that's tangibly different are my. I've always been a very vivid dreamer. My dreams here are off the charts. Um, just borderline lucid on a regular basis. Um, and including some dreams that I wish I didn't have. I've never really had bad dreams per se. Uh, but I have been opened up to dreaming some things that I'm not sure were dreams here that I never experienced before or don't remember experiencing.
can you elaborate on that a little bit? Is that something you want
Uh,
to talk about?
sure. This is what I was alluding to before we started the conversation. Um, I going back to like my teenage years, I would have time slips. So I would be missing 4, 5, 6 hours. I would be missing a few times a couple of days. And
Mm.
I'd,
Oh,
wake up and it was like my parents were zombies. They didn't know where I had been or what was going on. Oh, you've just been sleeping. So I had lots of weird experiences, um, out of body experiences. Felt like maybe I was taken a few times. Um, and then it just kind of went away. And then when I moved to Shasta, I have fairly routinely dreams of beings in my room, waking up to my room just shimmering, pink and purple, um, like things are happening, and thankfully I don't remember too much. They don't feel like dreams. So I think the energy here has opened me up a little bit more to remembering some of my experiences. Um, that I'm not really sure I want to. So that's
yeah.
really the only other thing that's happened since I've been here that's been profound.
Well, first of all, let me say thanks for sharing, and I don't blame you for not necessarily wanting to remember. Some people might be listening and be like, "Oh, don't you want to know? Like, don't you, you know?" And it's easy to say from the outside looking in, potentially, but the unknown is. I wish I could say that after almost 10 years of doing this podcast, that I would just with open arms welcome any ridiculous, crazy, astounding experience of the paranormal variety and not be afraid. But I can't say that's the case. We actually had this conversation when we were at the Shasta City Park.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I know you had that experience with Bigfoot. Something that, being in the Northwest, I'm constantly. I watched a movie about Bigfoot last night. Um, it's something that's never far from my thoughts. It's something that intrigues me, and I've always thought definitely would love to see a Bigfoot. But even as a little kid, it's like just not at night. you know, just not at night. I don't need that. But and I always thought, yeah, I'd love to have any experience. Bring it on. But there's some scary stuff out there, and yeah, I used to think when we watched The Matrix, right? Like hell yeah, I'd take the red pill every time. Yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm really not so sure. I like this reality, and I do think there's more going on, and I think it's one of those things that when you turn towards something, you open yourself up to it, which is why I don't focus on it too much. I really feel like if I focused on it and wanted it to be more present in my life, that it would be. And then I watch an interview with Travis Walton or an interview with Whitley Strieber, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe not. Maybe that's not something I need in my life. So,
Yeah, I mean, talk about having your life turned upside down.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and to willingly walk into something like that is, whew, I mean,
I could
there
lose my
is,
mind. I could literally lose my mind, I think.
yeah, I'm with you. I could too. And having glimpses of feeling like that might already be happening just with past experiences, it is. um and it's not so much like I do think of, like, the reality shattering experience, that flavor, right? There's that flavor, which is its own thing. And then another flavor, which is much more bitter and sour to the taste, is the the extreme anxiety and fear inducing experience that almost becomes unbearable to the point of cracking, right? Where it's like, I can't handle this much fear and or panic, anxiety, whatever. And then you crack.
Yeah.
um for me, that one's more terrifying than the other.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the entry point is, I mean, if you've ever had sleep paralysis, which I have, had sleep paralysis with a being standing on top of me, right to the next, just looking down at me. If you've ever had sleep paralysis, you know it can be terrifying. So that's just entry level, right? Then the reality of what that might be on top of that, beyond that, if I'm having a hard time dealing with this terror just with the basic situation, what's going to happen when it's all illuminated and I figure out why this is actually happening? Yeah, I'm not sure that's a door I need to walk through.
Yeah, I don't think so. I've it's strange when I think about this. When I was very young, I slept walked. I did a lot of sleepwalking. And then in my like early 20s, I did have, from what I can remember, the only experiences of sleep paralysis happened in that period of my life. And one of them was auditory, and a couple other times it was never the man in the hat or the being at the end of my bed. It was always something strange and different. But like one time it was just a ribbon, a beautiful ribbon, like in the daytime, like almost like like those color guard or the ribbon dancers,
Yeah,
those people with the sticks with the ribbon on it. It was almost like this ribbon, just like almost like a sea snake, slowly floating towards me. It was gorgeous and absolutely terrifying. um yeah, I don't think that just being all willy-nilly about plunging into, I mean, I think sometimes we need to plunge ourselves into the deep end, right, for certain experiences, and to kind of, because we'll never jump in the pool unless we do it all at once. but then there's also, I think you get a little older and you realize, okay, there's some responsibility on my part that I might need to show some thoughtfulness, even more so than caution. And what am I doing this for? Like, why am I walking through this door that you're talking about, right? Like, what purpose does it serve us to walk through a door that might just flip that switch for us? Um,
Especially if you have people in your life you care about. Like I said, I mean, oh, it'd be fun. Well, no, it's probably not going to be fun. First off, you know, but yeah. Second off, I mean, having experiences like that, change you. Like I said, listen to a Travis Walton interview. That guy seems completely legit, totally down to earth, and he will tell you that that ruined his life. He'll continue to talk about it, which I think is very brave and impressive of him. But you could also tell that he wished it had never happened. So
yeah, he'd rather be at a BW3s having happy hour drinks and half price apps with his buddies, talking about their fantasy football league.
exactly. And if things play out the way that I think that they're going to, the way I believe they're going to, I'll get to glimpse the answers when I step through on the other side of the veil eventually. So no need to rush into that.
Yeah, but it's interesting because there are there's these firm boundaries, right? That I think that aren't as firm as maybe we think they are sometimes. But we, you're not you're not in a position where you're separating yourself from these experiences, right? And we're talking about not willingly walking through, certain doors, a very specific door anyway.
Yeah,
Um, Yet, because there are people who might be like, oh, whenever I go through this area, I hallucinate. I don't need to be going to that spot. Someone might be interpreting it right the other way. I mean, when it
right.
comes to personal interpretation of experience, it can it can span the whole spectrum. What one person sees as a warning, you have seen as an invitation.
Sure. Sure, but I mean, maybe it has to do with how you feel about it. I mean, I think our feelings, our intuition, is our greatest connection to the universe. So, if someone is terrified by that, maybe they should be terrified by that. If a little kid is not terrified by that and thinks, "Wow, that's the closest thing I can imagine to experiencing God," then maybe you walk in that direction. So I haven't had a lot of experience with being genuinely scared about anything. um, the sleep paralysis stuff, I have been genuinely terrified. And, like I said, some of the experiences and dreams uh, that I've had have definitely scared me. Um, so, if something is genuinely frightening, I don't need to explore that at this point in my life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun doors to walk through that are going to be good.
Well, that's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's endless, the amount of doorways that qualify for that, I think. I do want to touch on this creature situation because you gave me some very interesting information while we were in Shasta hanging out that, without even really understanding, I'd only been there once before for a very short period of time. And so I didn't really know the lay of the land, other than just reading a ton about it and, being fascinated by the place for, 5 years or whatever it's been. But I just assumed it was just lousy with creatures, right? Which is a phrase I love, meaning there's a ton of creatures running around, and specifically Sasquatch, etc. And it turns out that the woods there they're not dense. Is why don't I let you take the lead on this when it comes to creature sightings in Shasta?
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, just in this area, right? So, um, Shasta is, I would say, maybe 60, 70 miles as the crow flies to Willow Creek, where the Patterson Gimlin film took place. Um, Takes a couple hours to get there, but because of the roads and stuff, because it's so rugged, you can't actually go that way. But I was telling you the story about the Trinity Alps. It's so rugged that it is said that if you ironed out that county, it would be the size of Texas. Um, it is extremely, extremely rugged. There are very few people there. Whereas just to this side, to the east of the Trinity Alps, you know, to the east of Mount Shasta is essentially just, flat. It just, you're rolling hills until you get to Nevada. Around this area, we basically have pine forests, and they are not particularly thick. They're not particularly dense. There's not a lot of underbrush. So we really don't get very many sightings. I've never personally met anybody that has seen a Bigfoot around Mount Shasta. I've heard a few different stories, but I've never heard anybody say that that has happened to them. Whereas you go over to Trinity, you will hear people talk about it all the time. So I think that this just is not a good corridor for travel. I think when you get over to the Trinity and you get over into the coastal range, you can follow that coastal range all the way to Canada. And then when you're just north of here, Mount Shasta is the southernmost Cascade Mountain. When you get into the Cascades in Oregon, you can also follow that clear up into Canada. And those are dense forests. So I think those are the places where the main sightings are. And this just isn't a dense place because of that. I did tell you, I do, and I showed you a picture. I did find a print not far from our house that was massive, and that I am convinced it was a big footprint. And it happened right after the rains. We're in extremely volcanic soils. It's impossible to put a footprint into this soil. It's so jam packed, and it was at least 2 inches deep and a size 23. Um, and my dogs went up and sniffed it and ran off. Just really strange behavior. But yeah, from my experience, there's not a ton of creature sightings around here.
Yeah, that is a compelling print. And
Still there
that,
2 years later.
I mean, it is, yeah, I mean, next time I come up, I got to come see it.
Yeah.
I got to come see this. And it's occurring to me as we're speaking about this that it's not very thick, it's not very dense. You don't hear a lot of local sightings in that specific area. It's kind of the outskirt, the lowest tip of like a very it's kind of on the edge of containing major hotspots, legendary locations for sightings, etc. And Shasta is such a power place, the heart chakra of the world. It's such an energy, this vortex there, or vortexes everywhere, whatever. Is there, it's making me wonder now, is Shasta one of the perimeter points, right? And if it is, what are some of the other perimeter points like that kind of contain this magical world where these other creatures and in the liminal space, etc., where they operate? And almost not like a perimeter point, like a guard tower, right? Like a prison, not like that, not like keeping them in, but that kind of dictates safe spaces, which is also, I guess, maybe dependent on terrain. Because like you're saying, if you iron out that county and like just pulled it tight, all the mountains and elevation and inclines and everything would turn out to be the size of Texas, which is, if anyone's driven through Texas, just how stupid big it is. It's not even fun to drive through.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to clarify, I did tell you that that was a claim from Trinity County. It sounds ludicrous to me, but if they're going to go with it, I'm going to go with it. So,
Yeah, it's like, what are we fudging the numbers for? Are we trying to get somebody to buy?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the
But the other thing on that same note, Ryan, is you could look at it the flip side, because if you look at the old Indian legends around here, the Wintu tribe, they obviously thought that Shasta was the cradle of where God created all of the creatures. But in the Wintu's legends, they did not go on the mount. They felt that that was a sacrilege. They thought that it was dangerous. Um, that was not a place that they would voluntarily go. So if you look at that, maybe that was had something to do with the energy of the mountain too. So if they're wary of that mountain, maybe other things are also wary of that mountain.
That's interesting. I want to talk more about that. We're going to take a quick break. I'm talking with my buddy Forrest about Shasta. We're talking about hallucinations. We're talking about creatures. We're talking about power places. Um, all the good stuff here today on the show. And patreon.com/Ryan Singer, $3 a month gets you ad-free experiences. And we're back. Forrest, tell me more. Tell me more. Um, because you studied religious studies, and was it new religious movements over in Glastonbury?
That was part of what I studied. Yeah.
So which is interesting because Shasta has a lot of like religious, a lot of, like you said, people being drawn there, people coming there thinking they're called there, um, feeling like some like the great answers of the universe might be, given to them if only they can make it to Mount Shasta. There are, more than a handful, I would argue, probably guessing, people who claim to have the answers. Did something just flash on your screen?
Yeah, that was my cat Gus.
Oh my God. Okay. I kind of saw that in my peripheral. Uh,
Not a
anyway,
hallucination.
yeah. So, there's a lot of that energy there, right? Of like this, the ultimate truth energy, the seeking and also the, hey, I can deliver it or I can give it to you. Oh, there's the tail. Um, so let's talk more about that because like it is fascinating to think about this fear coupled with respect. You're talking about with the Winter tribe. It's sacrilege to go up there. It's a dangerous place. So we are in awe of the things that are dangerous, right? That are
Yeah.
more powerful than us. I think that's part of the allure of Sasquatch. Bigger, stronger equals dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it was kind of like we were talking about with the hallucination, how a hallucination hits somebody. It's how you feel about it. It's how you interpret it. Are you open to it? I think if you have an open mind, if you have an open heart, you are going to be open to a lot more experiences.
I lost Forrest. We lost him. The connection is down. We're going to see if we can't reconnect here because we've got more to talk about. Um, so yeah, maybe we'll put the commercial in here instead of where it was just a minute ago. Or let's see if he can jump back in or not. We're talking about Shasta. That is funny that it disconnects right when we're talking about this, but you know about these PowerPoints or places. Oh, it looks like Forrest is coming back in as he's connecting to audio. Uh, it looks like we're connected back to audio. Are you there?
I am. Yeah. Sorry. We had a power surge while we were talking about magnetic vibrations.
That I know. I mean, how funny is that? That is perfectly timed. Thank you. Thank you to the mountain for that. Yeah, so just to let's pick up where we left off. We were just kind of talking about, being in awe of the danger of the power and all that goes along with it. And the people that go there and the people that are there, you know, saying that they have the answers potentially for people who come there.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of people here that are gurus who claim to be gurus. And I personally am wary of anybody who would call themselves a guru. I'm sure you're like me. You find people that have wisdom for you. Those people are never going to ask for money, and they're never going to tell you they're a guru. But we seem to get a lot of people here that do claim to be gurus, and a lot of people who willingly pay them and follow them. So, but I think as far as the energy here, I think you could equate it to a drug. That's why you get people walking through here and visiting here that are so high that they love it. They do anything to come back. I know you've had a little taste of that. um So Shasta is an interesting place. I've never had that kind of overwhelming, even being up on the mountain, that it's an evil place or a dangerous place. But definitely some people believe that. So I was just wondering if that might have something to do with a lack of creatures around here. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if there is, if there is the presence of something, I don't know, ultra powerful and interdimensional, or pervasive in all things, and where its limits are beyond our scope of understanding in the physical and the material world, it would make sense that material participants in this realm who might be a little more tapped into understanding that would avoid it if
Yeah,
it was, not to put like evil or dark connotations attached to it, but just like, a train is not an evil thing. But if you're standing on the track when it's coming, it looks pretty damn foreboding, right?
yeah, yeah,
And then one might ascribe like, oh, it looks like an evil face coming at me. It's gonna kill me. Yeah, it will kill you. It will kill you, and it won't think twice about it. But that's because you're just kind of in its way. But it's
yeah,
not an evil thing, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, the other thing that's interesting too, we talked a little bit while you were here, was there are a lot of UFO sightings. So, the mountain is 14,200 feet, and the old Everett Memorial Highway, that goes up to the old ski bowl, goes up to over 9,000 feet. So you can drive most of the way up that mountain, and there's a big parking lot at the top. And we used to routinely drive up there in the middle of the night and see UFOs, just UFO watch. Every time we would go up there, you would see lights that there's no way they can't move that way. That's not a plane. That's not a satellite. So the interesting thing is, a lot of times Sasquatch are seen at the same time of UFOs. So there's so many UFOs up there. To me, that would mean, there might be more of a proliferation of sightings. Um, but that's not the case either. So yeah, I don't know. Shasta is definitely a very interesting place, but it's also, I've found, as far as the power places I've been to, a very gentle place.
Okay, that's interesting. I love that fucking place, and I can't wait to get back. And my car, I was about 2 hours north of LA, and we stopped to get gas, and my engine is just like there's a bonfire in my hood, and I'm just like, uh-oh. And ended up, I don't the weirdest thing, it was just oil all over the inside of my engine. And
Oh
anyway,
no.
long story short, it wasn't my engine, it was just oil was getting out somehow, and then kind of smoking. And then, but I was like, if this is the last trip my car ever made, it went out in style. You know what I mean? Coming back from the mountain. I can't wait to get back up there when we're not blocked by a wall of 20-foot snow and cloud cover all night long every night. The there's there The UFO potential in a place like that, it has to be. I mean, it just boggles my mind. And we did some CE5, like a variation of CE5 on the last night we were there inside the place we were staying. And unfortunately, like the clouds made it impossible for us to see anything except one star that was in the sky that I wasn't exactly able to decipher which one it was using the star maps. But because like your phone was acting weird while we were there as well. Um, Things weren't operating the way I'm accustomed to them, like at least magnetically with compasses and GPS, etc. But um, God, I mean, it's like, how do I get back? How do I spend more time there? And you know, color me silly because I'm one of these people. I'm like, man, if I could just spend more time in Shasta, I could get some answers.
It feels that way though, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah,
It really
there
does.
is there's just a sense of the divine here. There's a sense of something pure. There's a sense of stepping behind the veil. And Yeah, no, you're not crazy. I mean, lots of people feel it, and it's definitely real.
I I tried my darndest to try to integrate into the local community a little bit while we were there, and had some really fun interactions with
I
some people
listened
who
to the
live there.
episode you were talking about your bar experience.
Oh my god, it was so funny. And don't let anybody tell you different. And if they do, I mean, just the craziest thing a stranger has, specifically a female stranger, has ever said to me and a friend in
It
my
doesn't
life.
have to make sense.
It doesn't have to make sense. I recommend going back and listen to that if you're wondering what we're talking about. I don't want to have to repeat it here, but well, I'm curious as we're kind of getting towards the end of our conversation, at least for this time. Um, I am tentatively planning another trip up there in my mind, and I'm trying to figure out when. It's probably going to be towards the end of summer or at the early fall when it's warm and we can get up to the top. Um, and all of the gurus and all of the energy and the cults that are there, and the UFO sightings, the Lemurians inside of the mountain, which we haven't even talked about, the Saint Germain, which we haven't even discussed. There's so much going on at Mount Shasta. And then, like a fool who moved to Hollywood with a suitcase on a bus and gets off at Hollywood and Vine and says, "Make me a star." Like the night, uh, naivete, or what? How am I? Why can I not say that right?
You're
Naivete.
saying it right.
Okay, my naivete. Until you mention it, I'm not even realizing if I just turn my head slightly to the northeast, I'm looking at Black Butte. And holy shit. I don't know if I told you, Eric had to go down to Dunsmuir to find like the library he needed a printer, right? And we went all around Shasta and we couldn't find anybody who had a printer he could use. So he has to go on down the road. I took that opportunity to go be like, well, we'll go over to Black Butte. And my Camry, I couldn't make it all the way to the trailhead of the actual of at the base,
Yeah.
because I was like, I don't want to risk, because it's starting to get, it's off-roady. And but I didn't even have to be there at the base. And we're talking about, what was it, Project Serpo or DARPA or anyway, I get those confused sometimes. But
Yeah.
the portal to Mars that's allegedly on Black Butte. And we get to Black Butte and there is not a soul anywhere close to where we are. And for our whole trip there and back, we saw two people, and so much wilderness, so much astounding beauty, breathtaking, emotional. And I could spend a month probably exploring just Black Butte,
Yeah.
let alone Shasta. And I don't know why I never, ever even thought about the inclusion of this place that has so much other lore and folklore and ufology stuff attached to it. It's literally right next to Mount Shasta.
Yeah. Yeah, very few people know about it. And there are several Black Buttes. There are at least a couple Black Buttes in Oregon as well. I think it just gets forgotten because it's not Mount Shasta, but it's definitely has its own energy and is a very trippy place. That's a place I've always wanted to climb Black Butte. You can climb Black Butte in an afternoon. There's a trail that goes all the way to the top.
I can't wait to do it.
Yeah, so I would absolutely love to do that as well.
Next time I'm there, we're doing that. And it's, I've been trying to get my mountain. I was doing a ton of hiking before the trip because I thought we were going to be hiking the mountain a lot while we were there. Unfortunately, the snow and everything else, I mean, it was gorgeous. And I've never had more fun in cold weather in my life, probably. Um, but the this idea that um, there's all this stuff I guess we'll call it, associated with Black Butte. You've got all this stuff associated with Shasta. But in the meantime, you just have people who are living their lives there, right? And you got to go to the grocery store. You got to shower. You got to take naps. It's not 24/7 full on like mystic. It's not a mystical circus happening in your life once you live there.
No, no, it's not. And we talked a little bit while you were here just about the people, the normal people that are here, the regular people are here, Democrats or Republicans, whatever your bent is. People here are very gentle. You know, for the most part, people here are very respectful. They're very kind. Everybody will say hi to you. Everybody will wave to you. Um, it's not about always being open. You know, usually businesses that are run uh, generally don't have a lot of help, so they'll be closed, you know, on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Monday, Tuesday, because they've got to get a couple of days off themselves. Everything closes generally by 9 o'clock. Our market here closes at 7 o'clock. Um, you know, living here is not about racing for convenience. You know, this is not a convenient place to be, but it is a special place to be. And it seems like that really seeps into everybody that lives here. Everything slows down, and it's something I could never trade again. I could never get back into the hustle and the bustle and the chaos.
Yeah, it is. God, it's almost like you're living in an exhale.
Mm, I like that.
And
I like that a lot.
God, it's so peaceful.
Yeah.
Um, God, I can't wait to get back up there and figure it all out, Forrest.
It'll be
And
fun. We've got some adventures to be had, Brian.
we definitely do. And all of those adventures start with my favorite place in the world, the Black Bear Diner. I my number one diner of all time, holding firm. I went to what was a top 5 diner for me last night because the Watering Hole, this new studio that I operate out of in North Hollywood, is I could walk there. I can walk to the North. It's called the NoHo Diner, North Hollywood Diner. It's like you walk into 1960 Vegas, right? It's like one of those type places. It's got like framed headshots of old school Hollywood entertainers and everything. Like you almost expect like Dean Martin to pop in and be like, "Is my booth available?" Um, and but I went there last night and I just had apple pie a la mode with some coffee. It was like, I don't know, 9:30, and it was nice, but it wasn't the Black Bear Diner. You know what I mean? It just
The Black Bear Diners ruined all other diners.
it really has. It really has. I'm just like, it did. It spoiled me. It's like when I sat front row at a baseball game right before home plate. It ruined all baseball games for me because I'll never have seats that good again, probably. But well, I'm curious as we wrap this up and put an end to our first chat on the show. Um, if there's anything that we didn't cover that you think you want to make sure we discuss before we put a bow on it.
You know, I'm not sure. I would just say your reaction to Mount Shasta tells me you need to follow up on that. You know, I think anytime you have an experience, whatever it might be, whether it's listening to music or visiting a place or meeting someone for the first time that just blows your mind, you know, anytime you have an experience where every fiber of your being is tingling and is engaged and wants to know more, that's the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, that is your way forward. So I definitely got the feeling with you being here that, you know, you were being called and, you know, not necessarily called to live here, but you're being called to be here, spend some time here, let this energy seep into your bones and see what kind of universal downloads will come from that. Uh, yeah, I would absolutely, if you feel that strongly about it, and obviously the 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 diners here as well. But if you feel that strongly about it, you should definitely follow up and spend as much time as you can here.
Yeah, Black Bear Diner is my holy city. It is the it you know is the final X on the map of my spiritual journey is
That's wonderful. That is absolutely
of
wonderful.
my that's my mecca. Um I yeah, well dude, this has been great. You know what, before we wrap up,
Sure.
if you've got a few more minutes,
Yeah, of course.
if you'll indulge me, I want to maybe just because I meant to do this earlier and I forgot, but I want to see if we can't get maybe a little more like specific detail on because you're talking about when you moved to Shasta and now you're having these dreams again. And I'm not trying to get you to remember something that, is unpleasant necessarily, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you can tell me a little bit more about just for someone who's listening who may be experiencing something similar about like the nature, like how some of these dreams are feeling different than just a normal dream, right? If in fact they are, or
Okay.
maybe a little more characterization about circling back to that.
Yeah, that's fine. They don't feel like normal dreams. So, like I said, I'm a very vivid dreamer, um, and a lot of times they verge on lucid, which is something I used to practice. I haven't practiced for a long time, um, but these dreams, in my vivid dreams, it feels very real, but it just feels like I'm living out somebody else's existence. I'm living someone else's narrative. I'm within a movie. I'm living it from the inside. Um, these dreams, if they're dreams, I feel like I'm not in control. I feel like someone else is in control. Something else is in control. Um, the colors are not vivid. The colors are very muted. Um, and there's an electricity of foreboding. You said that earlier. I think that describes it perfectly. Um, yeah, it's not your typical dream where you're going out and having an adventure. It's a dream where you are subject to something else happening to you. Sometimes it's not unpleasant. Sometimes it almost feels like a download. Like I'm not sure. I know you know who Sammy Hagar is. I'm not a huge fan of the Red Rocker, but kudos to Sammy Hagar for being Sammy Hagar. But I have heard him talk about having an experience similar to the ones that I've had, where he woke up in the middle of what he called a download and saw two creatures off in a little ship off in the distance, and they're like, "Oh shit, he woke up, they can see it, he can see us." He couldn't move, but he genuinely felt like he was getting information downloaded as a kid that was going to help him the rest of his life. He saw it as a very positive experience. Um, so I thought that was cool that he was willing to share that. And I have had situations like that where I did feel like I was being helped. um, those are even more nebulous. Those don't even have any shape or form. I'm just like I said, I'm like in a field of pink and purple and blues and greens, just in this field of color. And I kind of get the idea that there's somebody else there. Um, but usually the ones that I have are some kind of tall being in the room. I can't move. It's looking down at me. I don't know if it's the end of the experience, the beginning of the experience. I just know the only way I can make it go away is to close my eyes and forget about it. And which goes back to, taking the blue pill. Um, I, I don't want to follow that. I also have had the other thing that I had that had nothing to do with possible aliens, UFOs, or that delusion that I'm having. Um, I've also had dreams of entering an underground base here. And
Oh wow. Well, okay. Put a
yeah,
pin in
so
that. Put a pin in this.
and
This is
and there
this is the ultimate tease. I'm such a bastard.
yeah,
I
we
am
could talk about that
such
another time.
a bastard, and I
No, not at
apologize to
all. We could
everybody
talk about
listening.
that another time.
We're gonna have to do another talk relatively soon. And wow, I'm writing this down. I mean, I'm not gonna forget about it, but
No, that's that whole. You may have seen like the underground railroad. There's a map of the underground railroads of the United States, and one of them goes obviously to Area 51, and one of them goes to the Denver airport, and one of them goes right underneath Mount Shasta. And if you haven't seen that map, I'll find it and send it to you.
Please do, because
Yeah.
I have not seen this map.
Yeah. So,
Um,
and there are also very, very rich people that live here, generationally rich people that live here, who uh, I may not call out by name, but I'll talk to you about it some other time. That may have to do with these bases and stuff that's going on. If
oh,
they're real,
okay. If
if they're real,
asterisk, if they're real.
if they're real.
This has been a great tease for a future episode, and it also even lights a wholly different pilot light inside of me to like investigate something else altogether, even more. Forrest, this has been great, buddy. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for showing us around, hanging out with us while we were there, getting up on the mountain into the deep snow with us. We had a ton of fun with you. um, and I look forward to seeing you again when I get up there, and I look forward to chatting with you again about this underground base and some of the whatever else, whatever else this is happening here. There's a lot more to cover.
That's wonderful, Ryan. It's been really a pleasure. It was a great pleasure to meet you and fun conversation today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're the best. Thanks, buddy.
All right, take care.